After waiting 2 weeks for Gear 4th, I can easily say that I am highly satisfied. How's it going, YouTube? I am Gio, the Full Assassin. Today we're talking about One Piece Chapter 784, Gear 4th. And finally, after those 2 weeks, we finally get to find out what Gear 4th is. And I'm pleasantly satisfied with what it is, because it turns out, like all the fan theories that I read, it seems like all of those fan theories got put together into a really nice package. And we're given something like really fucking cool. But let's jump right in. I like how the cover page is kind of like a throwback to Thriller Bark. Because if you look at Gear 4th, I'm probably put 2 images right here. If you look at Gear 4th, it looks like Nightmare Luffy from when he was fighting his Gecko Morai and when he put all those shadows inside of him. So yeah, it's kind of like a throwback to Gear 4th, but let's get right into it. Okay, so we see all of the townspeople just Dressrosa. They're trying to run to the middle of the town, and they're trying to escape being sliced by this birdcage, which is knocking down all these buildings, slicing everything up in its path. And so we cut to Usopp, and he's saying, like, shouldn't the safest place be in the the middle of the country? And Violet notices that if you look up, like at the top of the birdcage, the center of the birdcage is moving, and it looks like it's moving to where Doflamingo is, which makes sense because Doflamingo, he's the one casting it, and so he has to be the one that's shooting the strings and controlling how fast the strings are coming in back into him or whatever. So it makes sense that he is the one that is, causing this birdcage to move. So technically he could just walk around town and just keep slicing people up and bringing the cage in, but that's whatever. So this kind of adds an extra element to this battle between Luffy and Doflamingo, that Luffy really has to defeat Doflamingo right now, because if he keeps moving around and the cage is coming in, it's going to cause more damage than what we previously thought last chapter. But yeah, we see that we also go back and we see that Zoro, he's running with Kinemon and his friend. I can't remember his friend's name. And it looks like they're probably headed to stop the birdcage, but we don't really, Zoro isn't, he hasn't said it yet, but I'm thinking he's going to start cutting up the birdcage, and try to lessen some of the damage or whatever. And then we see Law. He has his arm put back on thanks to the Tontadas, and I believe Monsieur might have cried on the wound to try to heal it, so that the blood can start flowing into his arm. He can start, his arm can really start healing or whatever. And then that's when we finally get the battle. We get back to the battle between Luffy and Doflamingo. Luffy, he starts filling his arm up with armament hockey, and then Doflamingo's like, Gear 4th. And so Luffy, he starts blowing into his arm, and so naturally you're thinking like, okay, is he doing a like a Gear 3rd type of thing? But no, you start seeing like his muscle mass is starting to get bigger instead of like normally with Gear 3rd is just kind of like a balloon, but it seems like his muscle mass is just getting bigger. And you see Kanuki Balloon, and then Doflamingo, he's just looking, and then as you see it, his body is starting to get bigger and bigger, kind of like when we had Nightmare Luffy during the Thriller Bark arc. Okay. He's just blowing and blowing and blowing. And then finally he finally reaches his maximum size, or his desired size, and it's called Gear 4th Pound Man. And Doflamingo, kind of like what I did, he was like, really, you just blew yourself up into a balloon? Like, I thought you were going to come out with something cooler than that. And then Luffy, he explains to him, he was like, for the past 2 years, I have been training, I have been fighting these dangerous giant monsters or whatever. So to combat these monsters, I had to make myself into this form. And so we see he starts to compress his arm into his body or whatever. Of course, with arm and hockey on both his kind of like on his sides of his body and on his legs, like with his arms or whatever. And you see his arms start to compress, and I thought this was a really great throwback to CP9 with Kaku, because when he went into his giraffe form, he was able to contract his neck in the same fashion. I believe Luffy just came up with this on his own, because I don't think he saw that fight with Zoro and Kaku. But I mean, yeah, but it was a nice little throwback. That's why I related it to. And so Luffy, he contracts his arm into his fist into his arm, and Doflamingo, he knows it. He was like, what, did he just absorb his fist into his body or whatever? And so Luffy, he goes in and he just punches the shit out of Doflamingo, sending him flying. And like, that shit was a mind blower right there, because you just see like the fist come out, and then boom, it just shoots like a cannon. He calls it the Kong gun. And so as Doflamingo lands, you see all of this blood just pouring on his face or whatever. And you see like some of the townspeople, they're like, wait, is that Doflamingo? He just came flying out of nowhere. And he was like, how do you, what are you doing here? And he was like, I kind of want to know the same thing. How did I get so far? And so he notices, he notices that he flew so far, and then as he looks up, he's like, he's kind of looking for Luffy. You see in the reflection of his glasses, Luffy is flying towards him, using his gear, using gear third to kick the air, and using his inflated body to float, kind of like Sanji or whatever, where he does the airwalk or whatever. And so Luffy, he's kicking the air using gear third. His body is hockeyed up, and he's just flying. And then Doflamingo says he's using his elasticity to fly now. And so Luffy, as he's flying in, he just super speeds to the side of Doflamingo, and he gives him a Rhino Schneider, and he kicks him into another building, like with that same compression technique that he used earlier, but with both of his legs. And as you see, it looks like Doflamingo even tries to hockey up the side of his body or whatever in time, but it just didn't work. And you see like blood is coming out of his mouth or whatever, and he just shot into that building. This fucking chapter is amazing. So everyone's like, oh, that big balloon guy, he just, came out of nowhere and he just kicked Doflamingo in the face. You see Luffy just bouncing around. Everyone has that teardrop on the back of his head. And then, Doflamingo, he's getting up and he was like, he comments that, a mere piece of rubber, like, he turned his body into armor, and combined with that with elasticity, made his attacks 3 times stronger. So last chapter, Doflamingo was talking about how Luffy made himself bigger but not faster, but he made himself faster, he's not strong enough. And so Luffy effectively combined both of those things, which is kind of despite what I was thinking last chapter, where Luffy was going to combine gear second and gear third. But this is like a beautiful combination. Like, I saw a whole bunch of fan theories talking about, Luffy's going to, increase his muscle mass or whatever. I even said it last chapter that maybe Luffy's going to become a giant. So it kind of all ties together. I saw someone else say he might use spring techniques, which this is kind of related to kind of like a spring. So yeah, it seems like all of those fan theories that I read combined into one thing. So Doflamingo, he jumps into the air or whatever. Luffy, he's right there, like right beside him, and he tries to give him a cavalry cannon. And Doflamingo, he dodges it, and he kicks Luffy in the side with a hamstring, but Luffy's side is hockeyed up, and plus he still has his elasticity, his rubber body parts or whatever. So that catches Doflamingo off guard. He was like, what? Even kicking him with an armored hagi, he still can able to use his elasticity. And so Luffy, still with the cavalry cannon, he stretches his arm in precision and punches Doflamingo, because Doflamingo tried to run away after he got that kick in, and Luffy's arm just kind of follows him, and then he punches him across the face with the cavalry cannon, and that's the end of the chapter. So yeah, that was pretty much the chapter. I thought this chapter was really cool. We finally, got to see Gear 4th after all that time. I really like that now, even though I believe he could probably do this outside of Gear 4th, that he could stretch his arm at will, and it moves to wherever the target is. And Luffy called it the Python arm, I believe. He was able to land that cavalry cannon, and he just decks Doflamingo across the face. I really like that. Also like that Luffy now has the speed and the strength combined, so that any other opponents that come after Doflamingo are not too much of a threat, like how I thought Doflamingo was going to be. Because obviously Doflamingo had the string that could cut through anything, and Luffy's main weakness is cutting things that can cut, because opposed to blunt force. But now this is really this shows that he's still being creative with his moves, and he's still learning with his moves or whatever. So that's really cool. Is this like a prelude to a possible Gear 5th? I don't know. But as of right now, it looks like Doflamingo is getting his shit kicked in. I believe that this is going to be a quick fight, unless Doflamingo pulls out something else that we don't know about. I highly doubt that. Because right now he's just getting, Luffy's putting in work, and Doflamingo, he's spouting all this blood, and with the time limit too, and I'm quite sure keeping up the bird cage, that has to be draining on his body or whatever, especially since he can't you're probably using the bird cage. You can't use that healing sewing technique as fast as you probably could. That's, I'm just speculating on that. But yeah, really cool chapter. Finally, Gear 4th. Leave your thoughts down below. What did you think of Gear 4th? Did you like it? Did you not like it? If you liked my content, you like my video, give it a thumbs up. And if you like, if you like my other videos, please subscribe. It really helps me out. And yeah, thank you for watching. I'm Gio the Foolish Assassin. I see you.
There's a war going on outside, no place to run and hide. Need to open eyes if you want to stay alive. Can't wait time when you trying to survive. Even when you die, your whole life should be alive. There's a war going on outside, no place to run and hide. Need to open eyes if you want to stay alive. Can't wait time when you trying to survive. Even when you die, your whole life should be alive.